If you're in the market for a foam paddle, you come to the right video. Hey there guys, welcome back to Pickleball Paddle Reviews, and today I am going to talk about foam paddles. Foam paddles are relatively new to the market. They really only came out this year, towards the end of the first quarter of 2025. So there have not actually been that much time for foam paddles to be on the market, but it feels like now that summer of 2025, there's a new paddle coming out every week and it's a foam paddle. So today I want to talk about how foam paddles feel, how foam paddles play, so that you can make the right purchasing decision when you're looking at those foam paddles yourself. Now, my observations, I'm seeing a lot of people on Reddit, at local spots that I'm playing at, not really, enjoying their boomsticks, enjoying their Flik F1s, even though those are two of the most powerful paddles out on the market right now. Now, why is that? The main reason, too long didn't read, I think they haven't played with foam paddles long enough. They don't really understand or get how to play with the foam paddle because foam paddles don't have as much feedback as polypropylene paddles. I think polypropylene paddles are more like playing with your fingertips, and foam paddles are more like playing with the pad of your palm. So polypropylene, because there's so many honeycomb structures inside the core itself, you got a lot of touch points in that paddle. So it's kind of easier to feel the feedback every time you hit the ball. But for a foam paddle, especially like a faux foam paddle, you just got this big pad right here, right? And depending if maybe you get a squishy ear pad or a harder pad, hey, that might affect how you feel about that paddle. Right, so for example, the very first foam paddle that came out on the market was this carbon Trufoam. And this had a faux foam core, all of it was foam, and some punch outs in the middle to kind of recreate a sweet spot. They used those punch outs to give it a little bit more squeeze and flex in the middle, as well as adding a fiberglass patch in the middle to give it more rigidity and kind of create a sweet spot that had power and deflection. Because if you poke a lot of holes inside foam, like just any foam that you might have, that structure is a lot weaker. So they needed that fiberglass patch, I think, to really reinforce that area and get it to be the sweet spot it needed to be. And I think also Carbon did a pretty good job selecting their foam. Their foam is a little bit more malleable, so it was able to absorb energy a little bit better. So I think people had less trouble picking this up and playing with it because their foam was softer. Their foam being softer, there was just a touch more feedback. It was just controllable enough that people were enjoying it, especially because there was extra dwell time from it being malleable. It was able to absorb the impact a little bit more, and you got like a squishier pad of your palm, and you could really understand shots from that. Now we get into a paddle like the Flik F1. This also was designed almost exactly the same as the carbon Trufoam. You got hole punches in the middle and a fiberglass square. Same reason, I think, to do the same thing. But why do so many people feel like this paddle has less feedback? So my reasoning is because it is a denser and harder foam. And that kind of creates a problem because denser foam makes all areas of this paddle kind of feel like a sweet spot. It's very confusing when you hit off-center hits that it still kind of feels like a sweet spot. It shouldn't, because you get the most deflection in the middle, but now everywhere around this area you're still feeling like you hit a sweet spot. And because it's dense, it's even harder to get a feel in your hand and brain what that hit is doing. So you're gonna hear a lot of people having a hard time. Just like the Olsen brother on Pickleball Studio, his review of the Flik was that, yeah, when you hit the center, it feels very powerful. So for drives and stuff, you know, that speed kind of makes up, even if you hit off center, speed makes up for it, it feels good. But when you're doing touch shots, what happens if you hit the center sometimes, but maybe this right here sometimes, but they feel the same? You're gonna have some trouble adapting your play to it because you're not even sure what results you're gonna get from the feedback you're getting from the paddle. So that's where I think many people have issues with foam paddles, especially since Carbon's foam is proprietary to them. So, you know, too bad other companies can't really use that foam inside their paddles. So there's just less dwell time for other companies to try with their foam. But that's when these paddles came out. This is the Selkirk Broomstick, and this is the LUZZ Tornado. These are both floating core. So what that means is they took the Gen 2, Gen 3 style technology where they injected EVA foam around the edge and pretty much put the foam core inside in the middle. They didn't have to hole punch those anymore because they kind of want this middle to feel like the sweet spot where the EVA foam is now the soft part where, you know, it's more springy in the middle, you get the dwell time in the middle. So now the sweet spot makes sense because now you have a solid piece of foam in the middle that can absorb that impact and gets extra absorption because of the EVA foam around it. You get that extra dwell time, you get that extra pop. It makes a little more sense, but you still don't get, you know, the greatest feedback because once again, you're still hitting into just a softer pad now, instead of hitting on your fingertip. So yes, these are probably easier to learn with overall, but honestly, it's not as easy to learn than polypropylene because polypropylene, like I said, you get so much feedback, you can feel and adapt to that paddle pretty much in one day. You could pick up any polypropylene paddle and in one day you'll probably be fine. But for these foam cores, especially the solid foam core ones like this Flik F1, these are really hard to learn with because it's just very hard to get the right feedback. Now, because I'm a reviewer, I get a lot of time with this foam paddle and different foam paddles. Over time, you kind of get used to how foam feels. And I think that's why a lot of reviewers will be like, this is very powerful, this is also very powerful. Because now they're able to control that power, they're able to hit more consistently and get the best outcomes out of these paddles. Whereas if you're just new coming in and picking up one of these foam paddles, it will feel very different and there's a very large learning curve on these, especially if you're not hitting a lot of time on these paddles. It takes a much longer to kind of adapt your play to these paddles. So I think if I was shopping for a foam paddle and I knew as much as I did now, I would definitely buy a floating core foam paddle just because it's just a little easier to learn with. It's more reliable, there's more dwell time. Maybe this has a little bit too much pop, but you could take off the weights if necessary to kind of get a little bit less power. And once you get used to that, then you can add the weight back on. I really don't know if I like this weighting system on the Broomstick yet, but I mean, I got used to playing with so many foam paddles. It really didn't feel too bad once I started playing with it. Now for this Flik, you know, I normally do 10-hour reviews, but this paddle I needed like 25 to 30 hours of playtime just to really kind of dial in how I was supposed to be hitting with it. This was very hard to learn with, very hard to master, but one of the good things is once you master this, other foam paddles are so easy. Like playing with this really dialed in my touch shots to get used to how foam reacts. So that was a good thing. And then, you know, if you're hitting the sweet spot on this, it's so tight and so small that like when you get to these are gigantic compared to this. So I'll put links down below to many of the foam paddles out right now. If I'm affiliated with any of those companies, I'll include my affiliate links and any codes that might bring down the price. Of course, if you enjoyed this kind of content or just appreciate my 2 cents on foam, please feel free to leave a comment down below, subscribe, and like this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this helped you out on picking out foam paddles. Peace.